The Miami Dolphins have another new addition to the linebacker room, courtesy of an agreement with KJ Britt. We're talking about him and how he fits here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today on the show, Bradley Chubb, rework contract. We know they figured that out to keep him on the roster. We got some of the details about what that reworked contract exactly looks like, and not just the salary cap savings that was facilitated courtesy to change. We have a salary cap ceiling update for the Dolphins. That was another minor victory this week for the team. But we're going to start with KJ Britt, the Dolphins' newest linebacker, who joins Jordyn Brooks and Tyrel Dodson to give the Dolphins a 1 through 3 that has a nice complement of skill sets. There's some nice physicality with all of these players, and that's really the element of KJ Britt's game that stands out the most. Is this is a physical between the tackles type of linebacker. If you want to paint the picture, he's not as physical or dense as what Elandon Roberts was, but that's kind of the player that came to mind to me this morning as I'm watching his film through the lens and the eye of who is this player for the Dolphins and how does he complement Tyrel Dodson and how does he complement Jordyn Brooks? So Jordyn Brooks obviously asked to play a lot in space. Tyrel Dodson was productive playing in space, but not necessarily a matchup man type of player. KJ Britt is probably the least appealing of these three players as far as what he does in space. But in close quarters, as a stack backer, when he's fitting gaps between the tackles and he's taking on blocks, despite the fact that he doesn't have great length, it's an element of a plug type of player that I think is a necessary role player if you're going to be well-rounded in your defensive personnel. And I like the fact that KJ Britt is a member of the 2021 NFL draft class. He really only first got his opportunities to start this year. His first 3 seasons, he played in 45 games in his first 3 seasons with only 4 starts, but then started 11 of 14 games for Tampa Bay this past year in his age 25 season. He's going to turn 26 in June. And when we laid out at the beginning of the offseason, like, what does this team need? What kind of energy do you need in your individual position rooms and for opportunities to play? I keep going back to the phrasing that I used was young and hungry, right? Like you need guys that have a chip on their shoulder and have something to prove and have a lot to play for, who are maybe coming off of rookie contracts and maybe were late bloomers. And KJ Britt's kind of that kind of guy where, his first 2 seasons in the NFL, he was a big-time special teams guy. He played 73 snaps on defense the first 2 seasons in the league. But on special teams, he was almost at 600 snaps. It was 324 and 253. A big-time special teams contributor. And then in 2023, actually started 4 games. His snap volume on defense went up. It was double what his first 2 years combined were. And he still played almost 275 snaps on special teams. This past year in Tampa was the opportunity, over 600 snaps on defense. And the special teams volume goes down. But, it was a chance to showcase and start. And obviously the start of his career is behind Devin White. And Devin White's building up to try to get a big-time contract, and that didn't happen for them, but then he leaves, and Britt develops, and I don't think necessarily KJ Britt's coming in with a starter label. I think, Tyrel Dodson should feel good about what the Dolphins' financial commitment is to him, and then obviously Jordyn Brooks being a well-established starter from last year. I don't think KJ Britt's going to come in and beat anybody out, but he's hungry to play. And if Tyrel Dodson has competition on base packages and early down packages and in short yardage packages for who's going to shoot gaps and blow up blockers and get in the backfield, it's a very different kind of linebacker than what your linebacker 3 was last year, which was, for a stretch, it was Anthony Walker, and then it was Duke Riley once Anthony Walker got banged up. And Duke has kind of clung around here for the last couple of years as a special teams guy, but undersized and rangy and runs better in space as a will backer than what he is a guy who could play in between the tackles and smack the taste out of your mouth, which is what KJ Britt's best qualities are. Now, from a stature perspective, just to kind of paint the picture, when he came through the NFL Combine in 2021, he ran mid 4.7s, about 50th percentile. He had a good broad jump. It was almost 10 feet. So some good lower body explosiveness there, which I think shows up when he's fitting tackles and he's wrapping up in short spaces, when he can just come downhill and unload his frame and pads into you in a head up situation. There's a lot of success here. He does not have a particularly large reach. His wingspan was 28th percentile for off-ball linebackers, and his arm length was 19th percentile. So as a result, his tackle radius is a little bit more reduced, and it makes him playing in close quarters be a lot more prominent piece of the puzzle for him if he's going to consistently have success. It is worth noting, this is a linebacker, despite the fact that he has a smaller gravitational pull, if you will, as a tackler and a defender in the box. He only has, according to Pro Football Reference, a missed tackle rate for his career of 6.7% of tackle opportunities. It's a pretty sturdy number. And I think that shows up. Now, there's some times when he fits and he sees it early and he wants to shoot a gap, and he shoots this gap, but he shoots it early and he's out in front of the back, and the back can cut back against the grain, where I think he is a little tight in the hips. And as a result of that, because he doesn't have great length, he can't really lean back into those tackle challenges. If I'm on the outside shoulder of the back and he can peel and bend back, I have to make sure that I'm fit tight to the hip and I'm not too far out in front of the front side shoulder. Because if that happens, I'm leaving myself open to, it's technically not a missed tackle, but I get into my gap responsibility and have a chance to finish a play, and I don't finish it. No, he should, from a coverage perspective, this is not a player you want out there man-to-man coverage. You're playing cover one, he's either blitzing or he's off the field. It's not where his strengths lie. But I do think it's a complementary skill set to foil off of Jordyn Brooks. And I think there's enough complement to what Tyrel Dodson does as a physical player, where I think, Dotson's probably going to end up taking your zone coverage snaps in your third and longs and your third and mids. Dodson will be on the field. But even if you got to go base and you want 3 stack linebackers, which the Dolphins just dabbled a little bit in towards the end of the year, but they didn't really commit to that because it was Duke Riley was your third linebacker at that stage because Anthony Walker was banged up and couldn't play. So we'll see. This doesn't finish linebacker for me. I think you do need like a primary special teams type of guy. But I think you're 1 through 3 now with Jordyn Brooks, Tyrel Dodson, and KJ Britt, who played a lot of football for Tampa last year. It's a pretty sturdy group. I'd still like to add one up the core in the safety on the back end, a guy that can kind of tie it all together. And then obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the interior defensive line. Although I did hear that the Dolphins were having some conversations with somebody yesterday. So we'll see if that ultimately ends up coming out. I tried to kind of hold off throughout the morning in case it got done. It didn't, at least as of time of deciding to record. So I'm sure as soon as I publish this, that news will drop or another agreement will drop. And in that case, well, we'll just do another show. So, but I wanted to get into Bradley Chubb, speaking of the defensive line, because we got some of the details courtesy of Spot Track around his contract. We're going to get into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go between dining out and shopping online and entertainment? It's easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When you use Monarch, you might be surprised and realize just how much you're spending on food delivery services. All those extra fees start to add up. But with Monarch Money, you can budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. So when the Bradley Chubb deal happened, we were looking at 28 and change for the salary cap hit, and he was due about $20 million in cash for the year. And when that news dropped, and then the news that followed up was just how much salary cap space is $16.3 million in salary cap space that the Dolphins saved from Bradley Chubb. The question was, well, did Bradley Chubb take a $16 million pay cut off of the $19.45 that he was owed? Or did he take a lesser pay cut and then the Dolphins pay him whatever portion of what was left over and give it to him in the form of a signing bonus and restructure something out? The large assumption was Bradley Chubb said goodbye to $16 million in cash. That is not the case, as we now know, courtesy of SpotTrack.com. And I think it's interesting to see what the Dolphins ultimately did here. There's no play time or production incentives that are immediately evident in the details of this contract. So this may not be the complete picture, but it does give you a little bit more of a picture of what it was, where he had no guaranteed money left. He had no bonus money. It was just base salary and then achieved incentives for workout bonuses and things of that nature and being active on game day. And that's where Bradley Chubb had the opportunity over the course of the next 3 seasons to play for the Dolphins. And that's what made the question of, well, he has no guaranteed money left on his contract. Do you keep him? Do you part ways and take the salary cap hit? And how would you do it? Would you take $1.2 million? All that's off the table because the Dolphins got the player to agree to an amended contract that takes a pay cut. He's currently scheduled to get $11 million in cash this year. But $2.2 million of that $11 million is achievable in per game bonuses when you dress on game day. So if he dressed for all 17 games, the bonus that he would get would add up to be $2.2 million. So that's part of that process of earning back the full value of what you could have earned being on the field. Part of that comes into play with you have to earn it by dressing on game days. And 2.2 is about as big of a number as I can remember seeing in that column on any of the contract charts. It's a very large number that the Dolphins said, hey, you want to get your money's worth and we want to get our money's worth out of you, then you get a dress on game day after missing all of last year. But they did give him almost a $7.5 million signing bonus, where that was the question. So in total, it's a base salary of 1.2, a signing bonus of just short of 7.5, and then the $2.2 million in per game active roster bonuses that if you dress for all 17 would add up to $2.2 million. So instead of him taking a $16 million pay cut and playing for $3 million, he got a $7.5 million signing bonus, and then he's playing for base salary this year. That adds up to about $8.7 million in guaranteed money because his salary this year, his base salary of $1.25 million is now guaranteed, and they already gave the signing bonus, or that they are committed to giving the signing bonus when he formally reworked the contract. So that answers that question, and that makes it make more sense on how Bradley Chubb is willing to cut his cash almost in half, is he gets a lump sum up front. And when you consider, like, Joey Bosa got 12 from the Bills, and Miami's on the hook for 8.7 plus however much Bradley Chubb plays, potentially up to $11 million this year. Relative to the way the market went, I mean, Bradley Chubb should be as healthy as he's been in a long time, right? Because he didn't play last year and had that whole year to rehab, and then he got to a point where he was practicing and out on the practice field, and then they made the call to not dress him with a couple of games left, and the Dolphins trying to make the playoffs. So it's much more digestible now to say, wow, Bradley Chubb was really desperate to play, surrendered $16 million in cash. He didn't do that. He went from really took $10 million off with 2.2 this year that he could earn back by getting on the field and playing. But then you look throughout the other remaining years of the contract, and then there's more money in roster per game bonuses that's available. There's a $4 million roster bonus that would be available to him in 2027. And it looks like that's where they stash most of the money that like was the pay cut. Because when the contract was done, it was phrased in a way that said Chubb is in a position to earn back all of the finances that he surrendered with this reworked deal, with taking the pay cut. But it looks like the way that they achieved that was they gave him more game day active bonus incentives throughout the life of the contract, which is through 2027. So 3 years worth. This year, 26 and 27 are not $2.2 million. They're $680,000 a piece. And then a $4 million roster bonus in 2027. So it looks to me like that's where the vast majority, it's not like Bradley Chubb gets 8 sacks and he gets a $3 million bonus that the Dolphins are going to have to pay out. Now, again, that might still be a piece of this puzzle. But as I start adding up the numbers of what's available in incentive money, knowing that he surrendered about $9 million, the vast majority of that money looks like it's been tucked in other being available and being on the roster opportunities for Bradley Chubb throughout the next 3 seasons. So this is a pretty creative. I mean, there's nothing reinventing the wheel here, but you start piecing all of the places where they tuck a $4 million roster bonus and they tuck $2.2 million and stay on the field and dress on game day, and you get a check for like $160,000. You do it 17 times, you get $2.2 million. And it starts adding up to why this is a way that makes sense for the Dolphins, because realistically, there's no guaranteed money after this year anyway. So like they can still part ways and they could save the money from the reworked contract with Bradley Chubb, but they did end up prorating. There's 4 years. They put a void year on the back end of it. They pushed out 3/4 of $7.445 million into future years. So it does impact the exit ramp off this contract in 2026 because they prorated out almost $6 million of what the signing bonus was that he got this year to rework the contract of the $7.445 million. So just to give you the very elementary exit ramp in 2026. Right? We're not going to do the whole thing and look at all of them. But say Bradley Chubb plays this year and say he plays all 17 games. But say Jalen Phillips plays in all 17 games and they want to take the financial commitments that they're looking at for Bradley Chubb and they want to give him to Jalen Phillips because he's a younger player where Bradley Chubb would be going into his age, 30 season in 2026. So say they want to go in a younger direction there, get a little younger, but keep Jalen Phillips. They could pre-June 1st after this year move on from Bradley Chubb and save $7.34 million against the 2026 cap without having to wait and do a post-June 1st designation or anything like that. Now that's still almost $24 million in cap space, and that number last year or prior to the reworking of the contract was closer to 18 because that was before they took the vast majority of his income that he's earning and guaranteed this year and give it to him in a lump sum check. This is really the only contract that they've done anything with in this capacity because they haven't touched any of the middle-class contracts that they have at their disposal. I'm sure they will do that as they go so they don't unnecessarily restructure and defer more money than what they need when it's a year where there could potentially be a lot of upheaval and changes after the season's over. But speaking of the salary cap, the NFLPA gave us an interesting nugget. We're going to get into that next. Here, Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. March Madness is here. And with FanDuel, you have the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and who is cutting down the nets. You can pick all of your favorites. FanDuel makes it easy to pick them and back them with spreads, totals, and game procs. and you can stay in on the action through all of the tournament games. There's games on almost every day, so there's always something exciting to bet on. Plus, the FanDuel app is simple and easy to use, and when you get paid instantly, so there's no waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on all of the college hoops action all tournament long. So the NFLPA, and this came out yesterday, 11:30 a.m., right on the eve of the league calendar year starting. And it was each team's adjusted salary cap for the start of the 2025 league year. So if you remember the way the rules work, the league sets a floor or a ceiling. And the ceiling this year is $279.2 million in cap space. And then whatever cap space you didn't use from the year prior, you can roll over. Like the 49ers, their adjusted salary cap ceiling this year is $341 because they rolled over effectively $50 million in cap space because they restructured all their contracts and pushed everybody out, and then they rolled over the cap. And that's one way to do it is you could say, well, we'll restructure all of our guys, have a little bit more of a guaranteed deferment plan on our salary cap debt, and we'll roll it over every year. And that's how we are going to choose to operate from a salary cap perspective, because there's no interest on financing the dollars you spend in the NFL. And if anything, with the inflation of the salary cap every year, $1 today or $1 tomorrow is more valuable than $1 today. And with no interest that you get charged back on it, just do the financing every year, no matter what. But then there's other teams like the Dolphins only carried over $3 million in cap space. It was 3.1. So you don't have to be a math guy or a math girl to sit down and do 279.2 plus 3.1. Okay, the Dolphins should be at 282.3. Should be the Dolphins salary cap. But from the NFLPA, the formal adjusted salary cap number for the Dolphins is 285.8. So the Dolphins salary cap is an additional $3.6 million higher than what the projection or the formal number that I've been using since the NFL set the salary cap floor during the NFL Combine Week. So $3.6 million in cap space is not a small deal. Like, that's not a small amount of cap space to fit from a contract perspective. Now, it's not enough to alleviate all of the needs that you have as a team, but to put that number in perspective, from a cap hit perspective, James Daniels just signed 3 for $24, and Spotrac has his year one cap hit under $3.6 million. So that's another James Daniels caliber of contract that you can accommodate versus what my projections and the numbers that everybody has been using since before the NFLPA put this out. I didn't hear anybody talk about it. It's like, oh, it's an extra $3.5 million in cap space. Now it's $3.5 million. But when you're a team that is clearly shopping smart and not doing the thing that everybody insisted, I said, guys, they've got checks and balances with Brandon Shore and Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel. And I would expect the checks and balances to not mortgage the 2026 health and outlook of this football team just because there's some pressure to win this year. We don't know what the pressure is internally versus the pressure externally. We know they need to start winning more games and have postseason success, and all those things need to happen. But they have checks and balances in place as an organization. And it was insisted, nope, they're going to go full send. They're going to finance all the things into the future. They're going to throw everything at it this year. They're going to throw the kitchen sink because they need to win. They're not acting that way. And it certainly seems like they've run out of a lot of players to get crazy spending money on. So when you are operating smart, and I'll let you guys in on, like, some of the people that I have talked to that are aware of the general school of thought of the organization this offseason, the points of emphasis that have been brought up are getting back to your roots, to focus on your draft pick. Cam Wolf went on NFL Network yesterday and talked about it. He made the mention in talking because the Dolphins brass was at the Georgia Pro Day. And he said there's a bunch of defenders there for the Georgia Pro Day that the Dolphins could have that serve as fits for the defense. And Well, it's one thing with them having as many draft picks as they do. They're focused on utilizing these draft picks and investing in their roster in that way and shopping smart in free agency. And I'd have phone calls and text messages that have told me the same thing. So when we talked about the outlook of the team, I have that in the back of my head to know what the expected outlook is of strategically aligning yourself for the next life cycle of the team, whether the decision makers are a part of it or not. We'd like them to be, because that means you're going to have a successful 2025. I think everybody, whether you're a fan of what's happened with this group or not, you'd certainly like for them to be back next year because they had a successful season this year. And that's why when we talk about teams that compete through transitions, and we talk about the LA Rams, and they won the Super Bowl, and then they had a regression, and they had a bunch of people get hurt, and they had an older roster with a bunch of expensive players, and then they flush that system out, and they draft by volume, and they bring in some UDFAs, and they really get into the player development element of the football team and building a football team, and they've been competitive the last 2 years and had the Super Bowl champions on the ropes, in the road, in the snow, in the divisional round, while competing through transition. That's what the aspiration should be for the football team based on the way that they're behaving. And because they're behaving this way and their actions are telling us they're behaving this way, an extra $3.6 million in cap space is not a bad thing. That's going to do it for us here today on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as always for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. We get more signings, we'll react to them. Have a bunch more players on our radar. We'll see which ones they ultimately come to terms with. Lots of work still to be done on the interior defensive line. We got some work at corner in the secondary, perhaps another safety. Feel pretty good about linebacker now, courtesy KJ Britt, and I think we need one or two more guys in the trenches as well on the offensive side of the ball. So we'll see what comes our way. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in right here, Locked On Dolphins.